This is lesson 2 for, lesson 2. This is lesson 15 for 7th grade. And lesson 15 talks about equivalent fractions and reducing fractions. Alright, we call different ways to write the same fraction equivalent fractions because we use different numbers to represent those fractions, but they're essentially the same thing. In order to see this, with an example, we take 1/2, which would be half of a circle, and we take 1/2 and we put it into other circles with different sections. So we've got 2 out of 4 here, which is also still a half, 3 out of 6 pieces here, and 4 out of 8. We can still see across the board that these are all 1/2, they're just with different numbers. Now, in order to get from 1/2 to say 2/4, 3/6, 4/8, it all depends on what we multiply by. To get from 1/2 to 2/4, we multiply by 2/2. 1/2 to 3/6, we multiply by 3/3. Notice that we've got a 1 shaded here and a 1 shaded here. 2/2 is 1, 3/3 is 1, 4/4 is 1. And we had a property back in lessons 1 and 2 that we talked about, the property of multiplication. A times 1 equals A. Well, that's the identity property, I'm sorry. The identity, or the multiplicative identity, is 1, because when you multiply by 1, you don't change the value of anything, you always get the same thing. Well, that's essentially what we're doing here. 1/2 times 2/2 is the same thing as 1/2 times 1. So that's how we get the same value. 1/2 and 2/4 are the same thing. We didn't change anything except for the numbers, but we still have the same value. So that's what equivalent fractions are. So just to sum up here, all of these would be equivalent. Okay. Our first example here, sorry, I apologize about the dark screen. Find an equivalent fraction for 3/4 that has a denominator of 32. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we're going to write down 3/4. I'll try to remember to use a brighter screen next time. But we want to get from 4 to 32. How do we do that? We wanted a denominator of 32, but a fraction equivalent to 3/4. So we know that these are going to be equal, but we have to figure out what we multiply by first. Well, I know that 4 times 8 gives us 32. So times 8. That means we're going to multiply 3 times 8 to get our answer there. So 3 times 8 is 24. So we've got 24/32. That should be our answer. And we can see there that number 2 is the correct answer there. 24/32. Okay. This one's a little bit more involved. It says find a fraction equivalent to 1/3 with a denominator of 12. Then find a fraction equivalent to 1/4 with a denominator of 12. Well, 1/4. Finally, find the sum of the 2 fractions you came up with. Alright, so we have to come up with the equivalent fraction first, and then we're going to add. So 3 times 4 gets us to 12, so 1 times 4 will get us here. And 4 times 3 gets us to 12, so 1 times 3 is what we'll do here. So now we're going to add 4/12 and 3/12, because remember, sum means addition. So, and when we add, we don't add the denominators, denominator stays the same. We do add the 2 numerators, so it'll be 4 plus 3, which is 7, and we keep the same denominator. 7/12, so we should have been looking at number 4 here. Number 4, 7/12, because we could not reduce that any further. Alright. Okay, to sum up this screen, Now we're going to kind of go backwards. Before we were finding equivalent fractions. Now we're going to go from a fraction such as 4 over 8, and we're going to reduce it and figure out what fraction we have here. And once again, we'll be dividing by 1 or 4 over 4. Same thing. 4 over 4, 5 over 5, whatever it is. Whatever number goes into both the numerator and the denominator. So, if we look at 4/8, we know that's 1/2. Well, here's why. Because 4 goes into 4, and 4 also goes into 8. So if we divide by 4 over 4, we get 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. We get 1/2. So that's how we go about doing that. This is reducing, and this is how you get a fraction into its lowest terms. You keep going until your numerator and denominator cannot be reduced any further. And we'll show you what that's like with this one. It says reduce 36 over 54 to lowest terms. So 36 and 54. Now I told the students that there are a lot of numbers that go into 56 or 54 and 36. They share a lot of common factors. But if you're not sure where to start, you can always start, at least with these two, they're both even numbers. You can start dividing by 2 if you would like to. That's one option. But if you go that route, you'll probably have to end up dividing again later because you won't be in your lowest terms quite yet. Now for me, right off the bat, I wouldn't know what the greatest common factor is between these two. It happens to be 18. So if you divided this by 18 and this by 18, you get your answer right away. Excuse me. If you divide by the greatest common factor every time, you'll automatically be in full reduced form. But for me, I'm going to say, okay, I know that 6 goes into both of these. So we're going to divide by 6 over 6. And we will get 36 divided by 6 is 6. 54 divided by 6 is 9. Now I check that, and it's definitely a lot smaller. We're getting there, but I also know that we're not done yet because I know that 3 goes into 6 and 9. So we're going to divide by 3 again, or by 3. And we get 6 divided by 3 is 2. 9 divided by 3 is 3. And we get 2/3. Now, those two don't share any common factors. They're both prime. So, we should be looking at 2/3 for that one. That would be its lowest terms in reduced form there. Alright, this one. Simplify. 11 over 12 minus 1 over 12. Okay. Now I put in parentheses there. Simplify means you want your answer in reduced form. And actually, anytime that you get a fraction and you can reduce it, I would appreciate it if you would do that. It helps me out a lot and it keeps things a little cleaner. Alright, so just like when we added the fractions, we need a common denominator. We're going to keep 12 here, so there's already a common denominator. And we're going to subtract our numerators. So 11 minus 1 is 10. So we get 10 over 12. We are not done yet because 2 goes into both of these numbers. So we got to divide by 2 over 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And 12 divided by 2 is 6. So we get 5/6 there. Those cannot be reduced any further. They don't share any common factors, except for 1, but I'm not going to divide by 1, it won't change anything. And we should get number 1 there. I'm going to check my time quick. And we are doing okay. I'll erase this one. Alright. And we've got one here. Right, 35% as a reduced fraction. Well, where do we start here? Well, what are percents out of? They're out of 100. So 35 out of 100 is where we're going to start. But we want it reduced. So Number 2, technically correct, but there is a better answer out there. We want the reduced fraction of it. And what goes into both 35 and 100? Well, I know that 5 goes into both. This ends in a 5, this ends in a 0. That means 5 will go in both of them. Alright, so 35 divided by 5, we get 7. 100 divided by 5, I get 20. So 7 over 20 right there. And our little star should pop up right at number 3 there. So 3 would have been the correct answer for this one. And I believe this is our last example here. It says, in a bag, there are 4 red marbles, 2 blue marbles, and 8 green marbles. If you reached in the bag and pulled 1 marble out, what is the probability you would grab a green one? Okay? I'm going to write it like this. Probability of green equals. Alright. So you know probability, you end up getting a fraction here. You're going to end up with a fraction. And the first thing that you need to figure out is how many total marbles there are in the bag. So we've got 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 plus 8 is 14. So without a 14, excuse me, and we want to know the probability of getting a green. There are 8 green marbles. Okay? 8 out of 14, that would be, that's the same probability as what we're looking for, but we want this to be reduced. So what goes into both? Well, for sure I know that 2 does. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. 14 divided by 2 is 7. And we see that 4/7 would be our probability here. So number 4 there. 4 out of 7 chance of getting a green one. Alright, that is the last slide that I have. This was lesson 15 for 7th grade. And the homework is out on the homework link. I already put it up there.